when it comes to fatwa and stuff like that, some of the ulama, sometimes they might have a ruling on something that they have for themselves and their akhwas, the people that are close. But then when it comes to speaking to the masses, they might see something different. So it really depends. But in a public forum, if you ask me that question, I'm going to tell you I don't know. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم الحكيم اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين أما بعد. This is in continuation of our class Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni the Sheikh Abu Najah Hajjawi rahimahullah ta'ala. We reached the part Satrul Awrah, covering what needs to be covered when a person is making wudu. When a person is praying, what needs to be covered when a person is praying. Right. The first thing we covered with regards to right now we're going over shurut al-salat, the conditions of the salat. Some people may look at this as being something that is trivial, not necessarily trivial, but something that we should already know. And so what happens is Muslims, you may get embarrassed. You may be embarrassed to ask questions about what are the conditions of the salah, so on and so forth, because you may have been Muslim for a very long time, and it may be embarrassing to people to have to explain to them or someone to know that you don't know certain aspects of the salah. There's no shyness or embarrassment when it comes to learning Allah's deen. We forget sometimes, or sometimes we may not have been educated properly. And so if that's the case, we just take the time and we learn it again. It's not a big deal. It's better that you learn it now than stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah because you were negligent in your salah. And Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam, he said, أَوَّلُ مَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْهُ الْعَبْدِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. The first thing the slave will be asked about on the Day of Judgment is their salah. So then the salah, ya ikhwan, is something that is very important. It's very important, and it's something that should not be taken lightly. It's something that should not be taken lightly. And this is why when we look through the books of jurisprudence, Islamic jurisprudence, they have fiqh al-ibadat, and then after that you have fiqh al-mu'amalat. They have fiqh that deals with getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then after that you deal with business, marriage, divorce, burial, so on and so forth, crimes and punishments. But if you notice in the beginning parts of the books of fiqh, it talks about all has to do with closeness and your connection with Allah Jalla wa Ala. The connection via purification, wudu, ablution, praying, fasting, zakat, hajj, to the end of it. So the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, the first thing we covered was what? The time. Sah? Or what else did we cover? Does anyone remember? Don't remember. Purification. So we covered the time, al-tahara min al-hadith, purification, ahsant. And then after purification, we spoke about what? The times, right? So then today we're going to cover satrul awrah, covering the awrah, or the things that are incumbent for a Muslim to do or to cover when it's time for the salah, when it's time to pray. So the Shaykh Abu Najah, he starts off, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَمِنْهَا satrul awrah. So the first thing he mentioned, he says, وَمِنْهَا satrul awrah. And from the conditions or the shurut, for the shurut of the salat. And when we say shurut, this means the things that are, the preliminary things that need to be done prior to actually praying. All right? So he says, وَمِنْهَا سَتْرُ الْأَوْرَةِ. Before a person prays, their awrah has to be covered. The awrah has to be covered. So today, inshallah ta'ala, you're going to hear some things that you may not have heard before. Once again, we are studying the fiqh of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala. He was from the Imams of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. There are many things you're going to learn or hear that may be new. You may not be familiar with it, but this is the fiqh of the Salaf, the fiqh of the scholars of the past. And so he says, وَمِنْهَا سَتْرُ الْأَوْرَةِ. And from the conditions of the Salat is the cover, the awrah. So now the Shaykh rahimahullah is going to explain what the awrah is. Is there a separate awrah? Yani the body parts that must be covered for a man. And there's likewise a separate awrah that needs to be covered for a woman. So he says, rahimahullah, فَيَجِبُ بِمَا لَا يَصِفُ بَشَرَتَهَا. The first thing that is obligatory for a man and a woman is that the body parts are covered. The body parts are covered. What do you understand when you hear body parts covered? Huh? Fadl. Huh?
For men?
Men or women, what's understood by body parts being covered? They use the word in Arabic, they use the word wasf. Wasf. Yasifu. So if you just look at it linguistically, a person may understand wasf. You can see the body parts or something like that, right? Is that what you understand from it? Like private areas? Okay. So when they say la yasifu basharataha, that the bashar, what is the bashar? The bashar is the skin. And so what's understood by this here is that you cannot see through garments. This doesn't necessarily mean garments are tight. Well, you are not supposed to be able to see through. So the ulama, they say, la yakunu shaffafan. The word shaffaf, it means that you cannot see through the garment. So for example, a man or a woman cannot wear clothing that you can actually see through it. This is haram. This is haram to pray in. And what they mean by see-through, because they give you a further detail, they say, la yasifu lawnuha, that you're not able to see the skin color through the clothing. So this here is impermissible. This type of garment or clothing is impermissible. طيب. And then the Shaykh rahimahullah, he says, وَأَوْرَةُ رَجُلٍ. What needs to be covered for a man, what needs to be covered for a man, and there's some parts here that we're going to skip over because it's not relevant in our society. And this is important too when we study fiqh. Some things that that are mentioned in the books of fiqh, it's not relevant to every society, so therefore we're not going to mention everything. However, if a person actually studies Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni, then you will see some of the stuff that we left out. However, some of it is not relevant to our situation where we live. وَأَوْرَةُ رَجُلٍ مِنَ السُّرَّةِ إِلَى رُكْبَةٍ. أَوْرَةُ الرَّجُلِ, that which needs to be covered from a man is from the navel to the what? To the knees. مِنَ السُّرَّةِ or مِنَ السَّرَّةِ إِلَى رُكْبَةٍ, from the navel to the knees. وَكُلُّ حُرَّةٍ عَوْرَةٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهَا. And every free woman, her awrah, according to the school of Imam Ahmad, is everything except for her face. Everything except for her face. وَعَنْهُ, and also that was reported by Imam Ahmad, وَعَنْهُ كَفَّيْهَا, and likewise her hands. So the awrah, that which needs to be covered, mind you, this is talking about for the salat, that which needs to be covered is from the navel to the knees, and for a woman, wajhaha, everything except for wajhaha, and then another narration, her hands. Her hands and her face do not need to be covered in order to pray. وَتُسْتَحَبُّ صَلَاتُهُ فِي ثَوْبَيْنِ. Now they're going to talk about what is recommended in terms of garments for a person to wear when they pray. So the first thing that is mentioned is وَيُسْتَحَبُّ صَلَاتُهُ فِي ثَوْبَيْنِ. 2 thobes. A person might ask, like a thobe you have on? La. The term thobe, now this book was written maybe 800 years ago. About 800 years ago or so. Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni. So when they say thobe here, this is not talking about a thobe that we use or wear today. La. Rather, the term thobe is referring to qit'a min al-ghimash, yani a piece of material. In other words, a qamis. A qamis is like a shirt, a long shirt, not the thobe that we recognize it to be today. So they say wa tustahabbu salatuhu, because a person might read this and say, okay, then it's sunnah for me to put 2 thobes on, one on top of the other, right? Because you don't know what a thobe is. A thobe is not a thobe like this. This is not what the Prophet ﷺ wore. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he did not wear thiyab like this. This is customary from a particular country. This is not the libas of Nabi ﷺ. This is not the thobe that the Prophet ﷺ or his companions used to wear. So it says, وَتُسْتَحَبُّ صَلَاتُهُ فِي ثَوْبَيْنِ, that it is recommended for the musalli, or the one who is praying, to wear 2 thobes. Well, what are these 2 thobes? 2 pieces of garment. 2 pieces of garment. And it says, وَيَكْفِي سَتْرُ عَوْرَتِهِ فِي النَّفْلِ مَا أَحْدَ عَتِقَيْهِ فِي الْفَرْضِ. And it is sufficient for that person to cover his awrah in the nafl. The nafl here is, they're talking about the sunan prayers, or the sunan prayers. If he only has one of his sleeves, one of his shoulders uncovered. However, with regards to the fard, وَمَا أَحْدَ عَتِقَيْهِ فِي الْفَرْضِ, it's sufficient. So in this case, if a person is praying a wajib prayer, then he should at least have one shoulder covered. At least one shoulder covered. وَصَلَاتُهَا, and here they're talking about the women. وَصَلَاتُهَا فِي دَرْعٍ or dir'in. A dir', as explained by some of the ulama, is a qamis, tawil, a long garment for a woman. And then they say, wa khimarin. What is a khimar? Does anyone know what a khimar is? I see women here, they may have regular clothes on, and then they have something tied around their head. Is that a khimar? La. What's a khimar shar'i? A khimar, it covers ra'saha wa unuqaha. It covers her head and her neck. So it comes like this, the head and the neck. The head and the neck, not just the head part. Right? Now.
In order for it to be a khimar or shari, it has to be all black, right?
Does it have to be all black? La. Who told you that?
I just assumed that.
La. It doesn't have to be all black. Shuf, don't get confused with culture. We find in certain countries, and perhaps it may be practiced here, but we're talking about halal and haram. There's a distinct difference between the two. If you say that it must be all black, we need dalil. Not that it's recommended. Many of the ulama say it's recommended, but to say that it must be, meaning that if it's not, that, understand something, ya ikhwan wa akhwat. When we use the terminology, something is being haram or halal, if we say something is haram, this means that that person yastahiq adab Allahu jalla wa ala. That person is deserving of Allah's punishment if they don't do that thing. So if I tell you, this is haram, if you do this, this is haram. What you're saying essentially is that that person, if you don't do it, you are deserving of Allah's punishment. Now in Islam, in order to say something is haram, we need dalil. We can't say how you feel, what you think, what you like. Your opinion is not needed here. We need evidence. Kitab, sunnah, ijma'. Well, however, we're not saying that black may be recommended depending on where you come from. When I used to live in Mecca, we would go to the Harem. There would be people from all over the world, From certain parts of the world, women, they wore all black. Other parts, they may have worn all white. Other parts, they may have worn all green. Other parts, so on and so. Are we going to sit here and say all these Muslims around the world, these women is haram what they have on? Huh? And best believe they have ulama in their countries. They have scholars in their countries that know the Quran, know the Sunnah. Right? طيب. So, the Shaykh Rahimahullah says what? وَدِرْءٍ, that they must be covered. A long khamis. وَخِمَارٍ, and something to cover the neck and the head. And then they mention وَمِلْحَفَةً, milhafatin, like even an outer garment over top of that. Even an outer garment over top of that. And it says وَيُجْزِئُ سَتْرُ أَوْرَتِهَا. However, it is sufficient on a bare minimum to have the awrah covered. And then it says, the next issue, and this is a lot of detail with this, but we're not going to get into all the detail. However, that may come later on certain issues. It says, وَمَنْ انْكَشَفَ بَعْضُ أَوْرَتِهِ فَحُشَ. So let's say, for example, we understand what the awrah is. Well, we know what the awrah or what needs to be covered. So he says, وَمَنْ انْكَشَفَ بَعْضُ أَوْرَتِهِ. If a person has some of their awrah exposed. Let's say, for example, like we find today in the masajid. A brother may lead the salat, وَيَذَ بِاللَّهِ. He goes into a ruku', and you're praying behind him, you can see his backside coming out. Huh? I mean, we got brothers wearing pants so tight, his backside's coming out. His awrah is exposed. Huh? So here's a question. It says, وَمَنْ انْكَشَفَ بَعْضُ أَوْرَتِهِ فَحُشَ. So the word fahusha, that person's salat could be nullified depending on two things. Zaman wa kammin. Yani, the amount of time that body part is exposed and the amount of that which is being exposed. So for example, let's say that a brother, I'm using brothers here because a brother is praying and let's say he's in ruku', for example. Because this is something that we all see. He's in ruku', his pants is coming down, his underwear is just kind of, half of his behind is hanging out. Wa'yadu billah. Now, if it's a small amount, yani kad yu'fa an. It's perhaps that is part. If it's a large amount and it's for a long period of time, this can nullify salah. Let's say, for example, a brother has a thobe on, and he's praying, and his garments fall off of him, and now he's uryan, he's naked, and he bends down and pulls his clothes back on him. Does that nullify salah? La. Limada. Why not? Because it's muddat qasir. It's a small amount of time. Let's suppose he's praying, because some brothers believe that you cannot move while you're in the salat. How many times have you been in the salat? You hear a brother's phone going off, and he has music or something on his phone, and he's just stuck because he believes that if he moves, it nullifies his salah. How many times have we seen this? Yani, it is permissible in Islam for that person to go in his pocket, look at his phone, turn it off, and put it back in his pocket. This does not affect the salah. And we will get into that when we get to that actual part of the salah, inshallah ta'ala. But so if that person believes that if his clothes fall off of him, that he cannot pick them up, this could nullify that person's salah. This could nullify his salah. And then it says, "O salla fi thawbin muharramin." If a person prays in garments that's stolen. Let's say, for example, it's time for the salat. I say, for example, it's time for the salat. And not that I need it, I just happen to steal his clothes. I like this stove, I'm just going to take it. And I put it on and I pray with it. My salat could be invalid. I would have to pray again. That salat would be invalid. You need to pray again. And likewise, O najasan, if a person prays in garments that is najis, that's impurities on it, be it urine or what have you, and that person prays in garments that he or she knows have impurities on it, this will nullify that person's salah. طيب. That's a whole different ball game. If he didn't know, that's something different. We'll talk about that too, inshallah. طيب. And it says, وَلَا مِنْ حُبِسَ فِي مَحَالٍ نَجِسٍ. And then he mentioned, even speak about some of the Muslims that may be incarcerated. If a Muslim is incarcerated in a place where there's najasa and they have no way of avoiding it, in this case, la ba's. In this case, it is okay. And this is min bab al-darura. Min bab al-darura. Al-darura is something out of necessity. It may be made an exception. And this, you gotta be careful with the terms, because sometimes a person may think out of necessity something becomes halal, but it's still haram, but you have an exception to do it. But it doesn't take away from the ruling itself. Like, for example, a person eating pork to sustain their life, or drinking alcohol to sustain their life. This does not mean that pork and alcohol are halal, are permissible. Rather, they remain haram. However, to sustain life, there's an exception given. واضح? طيب. So it says, وَمَنْ وَجَدَ كِفَايَةَ عَوْرَتِهِ سَتَرَهَا. So now they're going to talk about people in different circumstances and different situations with regards to covering their aura. It says, وَمَنْ وَجَدَ كِفَايَةَ عَوْرَتِهِ سَتَرَهَا. If a person has, say for example, a person is somewhere, they have no clothing at all, and all they find, and this is what the ulama do. Sometimes when we go and study certain issues, you'll find that they'll mention the most extreme situation to give you as the talib or the student a gauge to think with, to show you the importance of certain things. So for example, in the first part here it says, وَمَنْ وَجَدَ كِفَايَةَ عَوْرَتِهِ سَتَرَهَا. Whoever has that which is obligatory to cover from their body parts, then you must cover it. For example, all you have, the only garments you have is that which will cover, maybe you have an izar, that's very short. All it covers is your navel to your knee. It doesn't cover anything else. Then this is sufficient, then you pray like this. Even if your shoulders aren't covered, you pray like this. And then it says, what if you don't, only thing you have is that which will cover the two farjayn, yani the front and the rear. That's all you have. You could be put in a situation, the only thing you have to cover is your private parts. You can't cover anything else, you cover both your private parts. It says, فَإِن لَمْ يَكْفِيهِمَا فَدُبْرٌ أَفَدُبْرُ. If you don't have enough to cover both your private parts, now mind you, we're talking about the salat, and all you have is maybe a piece of paper. If you have enough to cover your front and your back, khayran, pray like this. If all you have is one sheet, then use it to cover your rear. And it says, وَإِنْ أُعِيرَ سُطْرَةَ لَزِمَهُ قَبُولُهَا. And it says, if someone loans you some garments to take it, then it is an obligation. It is necessary that you take that garment that a person is loaning you. And then it says, let's say for example, this person has no clothing at all, nothing to cover anything with. What are you supposed to do? We have brothers that may be in prison. Perhaps their clothing is taken away from them. They may be in the hole or what have you. The clothing is taken away, so on and so forth. These are all possibilities. What should they do? Don't pray. That's wajib. Ya akhi, if you were on your deathbed and you couldn't move your hands, your feet, and the only thing you can move is your eyeballs, the salat is still wajib upon you. Nabi Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even made the salat obligatory in war. You could be in war and you still have to pray. So there's no exception. So here in this case, if a person is naked, they don't have any clothing at all, وَيُصَلِّي الْعَارِ قَائِدًا, then in this case, it is recommended, highly recommended, for the one who does not have any garments at all, to pray while they are sitting down, naked. If you're naked, you don't have any clothes, then you pray sitting down, bil ima'i. Then you move your limbs, so on and so forth, without actually going through all the positions. Istihbaban, and this is recommended. And this is recommended. Wayukunu, in this case, with no garments or anything like this, it says wayukunu imamahum wasatahum. So now the next scenario, suppose there's a jama'ah, and this is, they come up with extreme situations to help you think about what's important when it comes to the salat. It says wayukunu imamahum wasatahum. In this case, if this is the situation, and there's a jama'ah, and no one has any clothes, and so on and so forth, then the imam should be in the middle, not in the front. The imam should be in the middle of the ranks, not in the front. And it says, وَيُصَلِّ كُلُّ نَوْعٍ وَحْدَهُ. And when they say every individual group prays by themselves, well, what groups are they talking about? They're talking about the women and the men. So suppose there are women and men, Muslims are oppressed, and this is the situation, as we hear in some parts of the world, Muslims are getting tortured. Perhaps all their clothing was taken away and they threw them all in a particular place. The salat is still not left off. The men would pray by themselves and the women would pray by themselves. And then it says, فَإِنْ شَقَّ صَلَّ الرِّجَالُ وَاسْتَدْبَرَهُمَ النِّسَاءُ. And if it becomes difficult where they can't separate, then the men pray by themselves and the women turn around. And then when it's time for the women to pray, the women pray and the men turn around. This is a kalam of the Salaf, ya akhwan. This is how they think about the most extreme situations and how a Muslim is supposed to conduct themselves in those particular times. فَإِنْ وَجَدَ سُطْرَةً قَرِيبَةً فِي أَثْنَاءِ الصَّلَاةِ سَطَرَ وَبَنَى وَإِلَّا ابْتَدَأَ. All right, so here's the next issue. If a person were to find a sutra, let's say, for example, you're praying, and all you have is enough to cover your navel to your knees. And you're praying in a salat. Or let's say it's less than that. Let's say you got part of your aura is exposed. You don't have all of that. You have maybe just your front and your rear. And you're praying. And you see some garments close by. Qaribatan. Qaribatan, this is indicative that it is permissible for a Muslim to move while they are in salat. You can actually move up, back, left, right. You can move while you're praying. They say in this case, it is recommended that that person moves. Rather, they have to move and grab that garment, put it on their body, wabana, and continue to pray. If it is far, then they have to grab that garment, wabtada'a. Then they have to start their salat over again. So here's the issue. Even before, when we mentioned certain body parts being exposed, what is the indicator or the dabit? What is the tool that we use to determine whether something is far or close, or a lot of your garment, a lot of your body is exposed, or a small amount is exposed? How do we make that judgment? How do we make that call? Is the question clear?
It's about how do people go about in the state that they are, the land that they are.
Ahsant. We spoke about this before. The determining factor of what is acceptable in terms of body parts exposed and what's not acceptable, what's considered a long amount of time, what's considered a short amount of time, what's considered close, what's considered far away. How do we make those determinations? The ulama of Islam, there's a qaida in Islam, it's called Al-Aada Muhakkama. Al-Aada Muhakkama. The urf, or the customs of the people, take precedence. When do the customs of the people take precedence in Islam? Is when we don't find any nas, we don't find any text in opposition to it. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَعَاشِرَهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And this ayah is talking about your spouses. It says, live with them in goodness. Ma'ruf. A person of intellect is going to ask the question, what does goodness mean? How do we determine what's good and what's not good? In the Middle East, if a man wants to get married, he has to provide his wife with a maid. Does that apply here? No. So then what's goodness in one society may not be considered goodness in another. And this is why the onus, or it's important that the cultures of a particular people is not disregarded as long as it does not oppose Islam. As long as it does not oppose Islam. So in this case, how do we determine what's considered close or far? The urf of the people. Yani the customs of that particular group of people. But وَيُكْرَهُ فِي الصَّلَاةِ السَّدْلُ. So now they're going to mention some of the things in the salat that are hated. So the first thing they mention, وَيُكْرَهُ فِي الصَّلَاةِ السَّدْلُ. As-sadl have many different meanings here. But in this particular text, according to the school of Imam Ahmed, as-sadl here is a type of garment. It's a type of garment that a person wears. وَهُوَ طَرْحُ الثَّوْبِ عَلَى كَتَفَيْهِ وَلَا يَرُدُّ طَرْفَهُ عَلَى الْأُخْرَى. Let's say, for example, a person has garments, just a piece of garment on, and they have it, they just have the garments hanging and it's open and there's nothing there. This is called sadl. This is something that is hated, whether maybe you close it like this, but it could possibly open up. وَاشْتِمَالُ السَّمَاءِ السَّمَاءِ. And this is a type of garments that a person wears if they're making hajj. So they have the two garments on, and they, outside of that time, this is not recommended to wear. وَتَقْضِيَةُ وَجْهِهِ. A person covering his face. وَاللِّثَامُ عَلَى فَمِّهِ وَأَنْفِهِ. Covering his nose and his mouth in the salat. And this is why it's not permissible. In general, it is not permissible for a woman to wear the niqab while she is praying. While she is actually praying. وَكَفُّ كُمِّهِ وَلُفِّهِ. And also rolling up sleeves and stuff like that is not recommended. Another thing that is not recommended, وَشَدُّ وَسَطِهِ كَالزُّنَّارِ. Like if a person wears something around their waist and they tighten it. Let's say, for example, we have some sisters in this city, they might have abayas that are tight around the waist. Tight around the waist. Or the men wearing a thobe that is tight around the waist. This is something that the Christians would do. This is something that the Nasara would do. The next issue are the things that are considered muharram. The things that are considered muharram. So the first thing that is considered muharram, tahrumu al-khuyala'u fi thawbihi wa ghayrihi. The first thing is to have a thobe, tahrum al-khuyala fi thawbin wa ghayrihi. Anything that is out of arrogance with your thiyab or your garments. tahrum al-khuyala fi thawb wa ghayrihi. If a person, it's haram for a person to have garments and they are boastful about their garments and stuff like that. Wa imama wa ghayriha fi as-salat wa kharijuha fi ghayri al-harb. And outside of the salah. So if a person has very expensive clothes and they use it boastfully, like, yeah, this is, my stuff is hot and yours is not. And if you do that, this is something that is impermissible, to be vain and gaudy with your garments. This is impermissible. In fact, the only time that would be permissible is in harb. If you are fighting in a war or something like that, then this is something that is impermissible to behave in that way. Another thing that is impermissible, at-tasweer wa isti'maluhu. Using pictures and having pictures when a person is praying. So there are some people I've seen that have pictures on their garments, on their clothing. It may be a picture of a family member or a singer or a rapper or what have you. This is something that is impermissible. It's impermissible to have these things. وَيَحْرُمُ إِسْتِعْمَالُ مَنْزُوجٍ. And having something that is mixed with gold. Let's say, for example, you have garments that are mixed with gold or dhahab or any type of gold or silver. Before, just having gold and silver in your garments, this is something that is also impermissible. وَثِيَابُ حَرِيرٍ وَمَا هُوَ أَكْثَرُ ظُهُورٍ عَلَى الذُّكُورِ. Also, it is impermissible for a man to wear silk clothing, to wear garments made of silk. طيب. وَمَا هُوَ أَكْثَرُ ظُهُورٍ عَلَى الرِّجَالِ. So, for example, if a person has silk garments, the silk will become impermissible if that silk if it's more silk than cotton, or more silk than polyester, or more silk than something else. Yani if it has some form of silk in it, it's fine as long as it doesn't overcome the majority of the garment. Is that clear? So then it mentions some examples. It says, La idha stawaya. However, if it is equal, 50-50, silk versus cotton, then it says, La bats, yani no problem. وَلِلضَّرُورَةِ أَوْ لِحَكَّةٍ. So when would using silk, if it's majority silk, when would it become permissible? They mention some exceptions. The first one, لِضَرُورَةٍ أَوْ حَكَّةٍ. Let's say, for example, a person has a skin disease and silk on their skin is smooth. It makes it go away. Or if they're sick, مَرَضٍ أَوْ قَمَلٍ, if there's lice or there's a war or to the end of it. All of these things are things that are not, a person should not have if they, this is impermissible to have if a person uses silk, but these are some exceptions to the rule. The next part here, because there's more to it, but the next part here we're going to cover, inshallah ta'ala, is minha ijtinabu najasat. Another condition for the salat is staying away from impurities. Staying away from what? Impurities. It says, فَمَنْ حَمَلَ نَجَاسَةً لَا يُعْفَى عَنْهَا. If a person carries impurities with them, then they're not pardoned. How can a person carry something that's impure with them? Is that possible? How is it possible? Something on his shoes. Okay, what else? Huh? Something on your garment. So let's say, for example, a person goes to the hospital and they need to take a urine test. And you urinate in one of those cups and you just forget about it, put it in your pocket and you pray. Can that nullify your salat? Yes or no? You say no. Right. What about you? You say yes? It's in a container. Locked up in a container. There's plastic container, maybe a bag on top of it and all of that. And you put it in a bag inside, wrap it all up, and you put it in your pocket. So it's okay, right? It's not okay. Huh? I know it, but I'm just saying it's okay, right? No, it's not? Right. Ya Akhwan, it's not okay. The reality of it is, as it mentions here, فَحَمَلَ نَجَاسَةً لَا يُعْفَى عَنْهَا. If a person carries najasa, that urine, it remains najasa. The urine remains najasa. أو لاقاها بثوبيه أو بدنه لم تصح صلاته. Let's say, for example, a person touches some impurity by accident. You know it's impure. It gets on your arm, and you pray, you figure, I'll wash it off later. Does this nullify that person's salat? Absolutely. Absolutely. Another thing, if it gets on his garments, let's say some urine or something gets on your thobe, you don't wash it off. This also nullifies that person's salat. Here's another example. وَإِن طَيَّنَ أَرْضًا نَجِسَةً أَوْ فَرَشَهَا طَاهِرًا. Let's say, for example, we're in a situation where it's time for the salat. All right? We don't have, there's some urine on the floor, there's anything that is all impurities on the floor in front of you, on the ground in front of you. And you have a bucket of dirt, and you throw dirt over top of the impurities. Can you pray on top of that? The next question, listen. The next question. What if you have a prayer rug? This is more realistic. Most brothers should have a prayer rug. This is my motto. When you drive around in your car, brothers and sisters, have a bottle of water, a jug in your trunk, and a prayer rug. You never know when you're going to have to pray. A jug of water, a prayer rug, and if, maybe even an izar or something like that, make sure you have those things with you. So here's the situation. You have to pray. You're in a location. There's impurities on the floor. You can't clean it up, and you have no time to go anywhere else, but you got your prayer rug. Can you just throw your prayer rug on top of this najasa and pray on it? Who said yes?
If it is no way to clean it up.
There's no way to clean it up.
You gotta pray.
You
have to pray.
Right. So in this case, that rug is pure. So you put it on top of the impurities. Qur'an is hated. It's not recommended, but a person can do it if they have to. وَصَحَّةَ الصَّلَاةِ, and the salat would be correct. وَإِنْ كَانَ بِطَرَفِ مُصَلَّى مُتَّصِلًا. Let's say, for example, a person on that same prayer rug, there's some impurities at the end of the rug. It's not touching you, but it's connected to the rug. Can that person pray on it? Yes. Ahsant. وَإِنْ لَمْ يَنْجَرَّ بِمَشْيِهِ. He can pray on it as long as when that person walks away, that impurity is not attached to him while he is leaving. وَمَنْ رَأَى عَلَيْهِ نَجَاسَةً بَعْضُ صَلَاتِهِ وَجَهِلَ كَوْنَهَا فِيهَا لَمْ يُعِدْهَا. The next issue. Let's say, for example, we all prayed in the masjid. We got up from the salat, we leave, and then somebody says to the brother, "It looks like you got a stain on your thawb. It looks like it's some impurities." And a person, I didn't know. And then he turns around and he looks at it. Maybe it's like something that is impure on his thawb. What should that person do? He didn't know it was there, had no idea it was there. What should he do? Should he pray again? No. Why not? I sense that person does not have to pray again. Why? There's another principle in Islam. Al-yaqeen la yazulu bishak. Certainty is not removed with doubt. He was certain while he prayed that he was pure, his garments was pure, and then after the salat, he walked outside, whatever happened to him, and then someone pointed out, certainty does not, now he's doubt. Well, when did that happen? He has no clue. He has no clue. What did it happen when I was putting my shoes on, sitting down in the chair, some liquid there, whatever the case may be. He doesn't know. So in this case, it is not obligated for him to repeat his salat. وَإِنْ عَلِمَ أَنَّهَا كَانَتْ فِيهَا لَكِنْ جَهِلَهَا أَوْ نَسِيهَا أَعَادَ. However, if that person knew that the impurity was there before he prayed and forgot about it, and then remembered after the salat was over, he prays that salat again. Right. Here's some other scenarios. There are a lot of different scenarios here. The next one. وَمَنْ جُبِرَ عَظْمُهُ بِنَجَسًا لَمْ يَجِبْ قَلْعُهَا أو قَلْعُهُ مَا ضَرَرٍ. Let's say, for example, a person broke their arm. And in order to use their arm to fix it, they put a cast on it, and they use pig guts or whatever to put the wrap on his or her arm. He cannot remove the wrap, because if you remove it, it's going to cause his arm or her arm to not heal properly. In this case, what should they do?
Just me would do it and leave it
Huh?
alone. Just me would do it and just over it.
We're not talking about wiping. No, does he have to remove it? La. They don't have to remove it. Rather, it stays in that particular place, and we, wipe over it like we talked about in Bab Tayammum, where we spoke about Tayammum in the book of Tahara that we covered like last year sometime. Right? But, and then he says, وَمَا سَقَطَ مِنْهُ عُدْوٍ أَوْ سِنٍّ فَطَاهِرٌ. Let's say, for example, in the ulama they mention extreme circumstances. Let's say, for example, something happens to a brother or a sister and their arm comes off. Is that arm considered impure? If you remember back in the book of Tahara, we said if an animal, and this is an animal that we can eat, like a lamb or something like that, and a piece of the leg got cut off. Someone cut the leg off, and you find that leg. Can you eat that leg? Can you cook that leg? Can you benefit from that leg? La. It is considered najis. That leg is considered meta. It's considered metata. And these animals, like that piece is impermissible. So a person might ask, well, if a person's arm comes off and you say, is that also considered najis? La. La. Likewise, a tooth. If a person's tooth fall out, is that considered impure? So perhaps your child has a tooth, you picked it up, had it in your pocket for the salah. Oh man, is that also considered najis? La. This is also not considered najis. And it says, now we're going to mention some places where the salah is not permissible to pray. It says, وَلَا تَصِحُّ الصَّلَاةُ فِي مَقْبَرَةٍ. It is not permissible to pray the salat in a graveyard. Inside of a grave, at a graveyard, you cannot pray the salat there. Like, a person might say, and we have, maybe some students are listening, well, I remember following a janazah, and they prayed the salat inside the waiting area, and then they went out to put the body in the ground. In Mecca, after any salat, in the Haram in Mecca, there's a janazah. Almost after every salat. And there are brothers that stand by and they run and follow behind the janazah. If you want to pray in the janazah, you can go to the Haram in Mecca every day for all 5 salawat. In fact, if there's a salat where there's no janazah, this is a rarity. Rather, the majority of the salawat, there are janazahs after every salat. Sometimes it's 1, 2, 3, 5. It could be a numerous amounts of bodies there. But every day you can pray a janazah at the Haram in Mecca. But at that point in time, when they carry the bodies away, sometimes it could take a long time and another salat could come in. They can carry the body to a faraway location. For example, when Sheikh Muhammad al-Subayr rahimahullah passed away, there was a huge janazah. And the people left from the Haram, they drove to another cemetery. And when they got there, there was a place inside when you walk in, and then the grave is outside. So some people, when they got there, they prayed inside. But it doesn't mean that they're praying in the maqbarah. They're not praying in the area where the bodies are. Rather, they're praying in a separate location. So a person may say, oh, well, I've seen this. And sometimes there's some masajid, wa'yadu billah, inside they have graves, inside of the masjid. This is impermissible. This is impermissible. طيب. وحش ولا تصح الصلاة في حش. Al-hush, ya ikhwan, is a bathroom. It is not permissible to pray inside of a bathroom. A bathroom meaning the place where there's a toilet. It is not permissible to pray in these places. Now, when you're locked up, it's something different, Sheikh. Something different. La darar wa la dirar. If it's darura, if there's no harm in it, meaning, in this case, your salat will not be invalidated if you're praying in a condition when a person's incarcerated. There's a whole different ruling for that. It's not a necessity. There's a qaida, al-dururat tabihu al-mahdhurat biqadriha. Al-dururat tabihu al-mahdhurat biqadriha. The things that are necessary to do, they become allowable out of necessity. Things that are impermissible may become allowable out of necessity. So in this case, you have no choice. طيب. So the next one, طيب, wa hammam. A person should not pray in the hammam. What is a hammam? Does anyone know what a hammam? We're not talking about birds. What's a hammam? Does anyone know? Ahsant, a bathhouse. A person, a lot of people may think a hammam is we use the bathroom at. Like it's a toilet. So then why are you separating hammam versus a toilet? Because essentially a hush is a toilet and a hammam is a place where you take a shower. You take a shower, what have you. Wa'a'tana ibl, and the places where camels live, you cannot pray there. Wa maqsoobin, or you cannot pray in a place that is stolen. If there's a masjid or a house that someone steals, it may not be permissible to pray there if someone steals that thing. Steals it. Wa aslihatiha, and likewise the roof on top of these things that we mentioned, you cannot pray on that either. Wa tasihu ilayha, however, it is permissible to pray towards these things. And with that, inshallah, we're going to stop because the rest of it speaks about praying on top of the Kaaba versus towards the Kaaba, so on and so forth, or on top of the Kaaba. If a person prays, and this is something that, this is a mas'ala, this is an issue, fil haqiqa, in reality, has always caused me trouble when I studied this, and the issue of praying inside of the Kaaba. Many of the ulama, they mention praying inside of the Kaaba in Mecca, you can pray your sunan prayer inside of the Kaaba. However, outside of or the obligatory prayers, you cannot pray them inside of the Kaaba. why and what's the reason and the understanding behind it is very extensive, and we're not going to touch on that, inshallah. For our next class, we will discuss istiqbal al-qibla, facing the qibla. And with that, we're going to stop. Any questions? MashaAllah. Fuqaha, MashaAllah. No questions?
I do have one question. Because I see some people have cell phones and they got pictures on their cell phone. And when they ring and they in Salat, you see the picture coming
Right.
on the cell phone.
Can they close it?
They ain't already in Salat.
No. Listen to what I'm saying.
Well, they can turn
It goes back. So it goes back to the issue, and Allah knows best. It could go back to the issue of fahusha. When we mention fahusha, zamanan wa qumman. Yani the amount of time and the amount that is exposed. Right? So if the time, and Allah knows best. Allah Ta'ala a'lam. However, if the amount of time is a lot, then you can close it. If they have it wide open for a long period of time, then Allah knows best. Any other question?
Did you mean, when you said the garment got to be to the knee, you mean over top of the knee or to the knee like this?
So as long as the knee is not exposed. So some person might say, well, there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He was laying down and his knee was exposed. And then when Uthman ibn Affan, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he came in, the Prophet ﷺ covered his knee. So a person might say, well, wait a minute, bro. In this one hadith, we talk about the awrah being from the navel to the knee. And then another situation, we have a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ with his knee exposed. And he said that he covered it up out of shyness in front of Uthman. Radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So based on that, some of the ulama, they mentioned specifically that there may be an awrah in the salah, and then there's an awrah outside of the salah, and Allah knows best. There's a lot of kalam from Ahlul Ilm on that particular issue. Any other questions? No, tafadhal.
You mentioned people having pictures of people, like people who died and stuff on their clothes and trying to pray in it.
It's not permissible.
What about animals?
Anything, they call it dhawat al-arwah. Yani anything that has a soul in it. It's not permissible to have those photos on your body and stuff like that when you're praying. Anything that has a soul in it. Father, you should not be able to pray. Now.
Let me see the question. If you got a child on the front or in the back, and get this cover the top, can you pray with it?
Allah, I would just remove it. Better safe than sorry. Type. Now.
You said when you pray, you can move back to the right. Like, let's say we're praying now. My sutra, someone was front of me in sutra, left and left. I don't want nobody to front of me, so I walk to the wall. Is it okay?
Can you, so the brother asked, if he's praying, can he walk in the salat if someone walks in front of him? The answer is yes, you can move. Lakin, however, what is the amount of movement that's what I'm saying. What is the amount of movement that is considered too much? So when we talk about this issue with some of the ulama, they mentioned that as long as a person, if he's moving around in the salat, we're not even talking about moving up, because we understand you can move up to a sutra or what have you. But we're talking about movement in the salat. If there's so much movement that a person may not believe that you're praying, at this point in time, the ulama say this nullifies that person's salat. Well, there. So if he's moving in the salat, but it still looks like he's praying, then inshallah ta'ala, then he or she is praying. Well, there. Say again.
The phone is right there. It's ringing.
Oh, how far away are you? Right here?
Maybe closer to that. You're standing around this.
Yeah, you can move it, inshallah. Inshallah, that's inshallah. Actually, we've heard some of the ulama even mention that. You can shut your phone down. Hello. A lot of times, like I said, it goes back to the order. It goes back to the customs of the people. In general, a person can move in the salat. A person can pick his phone up out of his pocket if it's ringing, turn his phone off, put the phone back in his pocket. We're going to cover When we go to, after we finish this, we're going to go into that in great detail about movements in the Salat. There's a whole chapter or part of a chapter that deals with that. Now, right. So the brother asks, what about the people who turn their heads and spit over the shoulder? So we studied this issue with Sheikh Muhammad al-Harbi when we were in school, one of our mashayikh that we studied with. And we asked about this issue. We said, in America, people, they turn their necks all the way to the back and they spit. And he said, la 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 ya shit. He said, why do they do that? He said, rather a person should look to the left and softly in front of them to the left, not turn their head all the way to the back. But when you look at the hadith in English, it says, yeah, but they turn their head all the way to the back. So what is this? This is why it's important when it comes to implementation of a hadith that you have to understand it the way the scholars of the past understood it. If we apply our understanding to a hadith on our own understanding, then we'd be jammed up. We'd be really jammed up. Now, any other questions? Khalas ya Sheikh? Tayyib, Zakallah khair. Tayyib. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to pick up again on Saturday. We didn't have class this past Saturday, but we're going to pick up on Saturday on Minhaj al-Haq from Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Sa'di, and then we'll pick up again after that. We'll start facing the Qibla for the Salat and the Shurut al-Salat from Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.